This is 5 Live Sports.
Tuffers and Vaughan's cricket show.
Yes, the winter is coming. The Ashes are going ahead and the T20 World Cup is on its way this week. Plenty to come on all of those over the next hour. First of all, Michael Vaughan, how much of a relief is it that the men's Ashes go ahead?
Yeah, I always thought they were going to go ahead, but I didn't know which players would get on the plane to go to Australia. Delighted that they've got a full squad that's available. Can't wait. It's the pinnacle of our sport. So it's great to see the green light get given this week.
Well, coming up, we'll speak to England all-rounder Chris Wokes about England's prospects for the T20 World Cup and those negotiations for the Ashes. And we'll look over the squad selection that was announced yesterday. Tuffers, and no great surprises, but perhaps a little bit too safe. What do you think?
Yes, Ellie, a little bit safe, a little bit samey as well. Obviously, a couple of crucial injuries that put a massive spanner in the works. But personally, I might have been a little bit more attacking. But as I always used to say, it always starts 0-0 at the beginning of the series.
Absolutely. Plenty to come over the next hour on Tuffers and Vaughan.
Tuffers and Vaughan's cricket show
On 5 Live.
Hello, guys. How are you? Lots to talk about in the next hour, isn't there?
Very good.
Yes.
I'm a bit put off by Phil's T-shirt, Ellie. I must admit, it says Mr. Rude.
Tell us what it
on
says.
Mr. Rude.
Mr.
It's my
Rude.
Mr. Man. It's my Mr. Man T-shirt. It's Dawny being sarcastic, I think.
You've never been rude to me, Tuffers.
Well, no, I know, but there you go. So a little bit of sarcasm there. From the
What
listeners.
Mr. Man T-shirt do you choose for Michael, do you think?
Oh, I don't know.
Let
What
you
would
think
it be?
about that. I don't know.
Mr. Skip. Mr. Skipper.
Mr.
Or something like
Skip. You're just too respectful, aren't you? You're always
Too
respectful.
respectful.
Mr. Tickle.
Mr. Tickle. Look, we've got so much to get through in the next hour of Tuffers and Vaughan. And do you know what? It's funny. It just struck me that it's actually less than 2 weeks since I was watching cricket. Bob Willis Trophy final at Lord's. So it's not that long ago. But we've got the T20 World Cup on its way. The Ashes is happening, as we discovered on Friday. So it's getting exciting for cricket fans and players alike. Not much of a break. So let's talk about the Ashes then. The men's Ashes confirmed to begin on December the 8th in Brisbane. It's really important. You cannot underestimate this, how important this tour is, Michael, not just to England and Australia, but to world cricket in general. So was there ever any question that it wouldn't happen?
I'm sure that there was quite a lot of doubt in recent times. I think the England players have been absolutely in their right to ask for a lot of the restrictions to be released. I think they were in their right to ask for less of a quarantine, I'm led to believe, for the families. I don't think it would have been fair for young families to fly over to Australia and spend 2 weeks in a hotel room. Some of the wives and girlfriends with 2 or 3 kids. I just don't think that was fair to ask of that. But I do think also that the England team were probably surprised by how much had changed over the course of a month in terms of what they were told a month ago to what was told last Sunday evening. I don't know the absolutes of what's going to happen, but I'm led to believe that the families will fly into Melbourne. You'll like this, Phil. I think they're flying into the Yarra Valley.
Oh,
I think
nice.
they get taken to the Yarra Valley, and
So that's a wine resort, isn't it?
I think they go to a vineyard for a few days. Ellie, so
They might not come back.
no idea what state they'll come out of there. But after a few days, they'll have to meet. They'll be able to meet up with the players, and I think importantly that the kids that are going with them will have a bit of outdoor space and maybe be able to interact with each other rather than be locked away in a room for too long, which is great. It's exactly what was required to get the Ashes on. It's so important. I said at the top of the show, it is the pinnacle of the pinnacle, And I've been disappointed, Ellie, I must admit, by the lack of players that have come forward and said, whatever happens this winter, I will be on that Ashes trip. Yeah. You remember that I think Monday they went to the T20 World Cup in Oman. They've had a few days quarantine there, so the Bibles are still with them throughout the T20 World Cup. So again, it's not difficult times. Not easy times for the players. But I've not heard one player come out and say, you know what, the one aspect of the winter that I desperately want to be a part of is those 10 weeks in Australia. So yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for what the players have gone through, but in my opinion, I hope that I'm not an old school dinosaur that's just saying that Test match cricket is the pinnacle. In my eyes, it has to stay the pinnacle. And this winter, the Ashes series, and if it was just one 10-week stint that the players did, and they did nothing else this winter, I would hope that players would have chosen the 10 weeks in Australia, because, if players choose to miss an Ashes series overseas in Australia, I think Test match cricket has some difficult times ahead.
That's a fair point. I can remember when we went to Antigua once, they put us in a beautiful hotel, and it was an all-inclusive hotel for 2 weeks before the first Test match.
I know what's coming, Phil.
That was a mistake.
What was happening? Tell us, what were the competitions by the pool during the day, Phil?
How many burgers we could eat.
Was it something to do with T-shirts?
It wasn't particularly. We didn't come out very match fit, I can assure you. But it was great fun. But I make you right there, Mike. I think that the Test cricket has got to be a little bit mindful. I mean, obviously, the last 18 months, couple of years or what have you has been very, very tough in bubbles, and we understand that and what have you. But it's a good point you make, Mike. It would be nice just to see a few guys sticking their hands up saying, listen, I'm willing to go through hell and high water to get myself down under and perform for my country. It's a huge thing, as you say. It's the pinnacle and what have you. Difficult times, I know, but I think we do need to be a bit careful of Test match cricket, because, being an England cricketer comes with travel away from families. We've all done it. We've all had to do it and what have you. So we've got to be a little bit mindful, and moving forward. They can't be asking for gold-plated toilet paper, every time they go.
I think they'll get it if they ask for it, Phil. I think they're getting everything that they ask for. If there's ever a time for ask for some gold-plated toilet paper in Australia, now is the time to ask. I think they'll get it.
Well,
but
got to be a bit careful.
But it's such a tough tour, isn't it? I mean, you two know, clearly better than me, obviously better than me, how tough that tour is. And you've got to be in a physical frame of mind, but you've got to be mentally on it as well, haven't you? Otherwise, as we've already joked about at the top, if you go 1-0 down at the Gabba, then it's very, very difficult to come back from that. And it could be a very long 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, very much so. But it can't be... it can't just be sort of a holiday with a bit of cricket thrown in as well, if you know what I mean. You've got to have that family time. I understand that. The guys are away for a hell of a long time and what have you, but you've got to be able to then switch on. And sometimes, that is with no distractions around you, and you've got to sort of knuckle down to the task at hand a little bit. I think, obviously, this is a different case scenario, so to speak, and what have you, but... you've got to be mindful about it, and we do not want to lose that first Test at the Gabba.
The one thing I'll say, Ellie, in terms of negotiation of what the England team have tried to achieve, I think by staying silent, they've probably achieved what they wanted, probably better than coming out saying, we're all going to come anyway. I think by staying silent and saying, there's been messages that certain players were not going to go and only going to be half an England side. Yeah. I think... By staying quiet, I think it's probably triggered the Board of Australia, Cricket Australia, and with help from the government to make sure that the players got what they asked for. I think one of the downsides in terms of it being absolutely written off is the wording. I don't think that in any wording in the last 18 months you could put definite. Definitely this is going to happen, because we're not in those times. Not too sure what may happen over the next month and a half. Things might open up a lot better in Australia. Quarantine might be less in a month or so's time. We all hope so. But you're just not sure what's going to happen with this pandemic. So I don't think the wording can absolutely be definite at the minute.
And that's the uncertainty, isn't it, Phil? And I kind of think that, we've all got used to living with the uncertainty over the last 18 months. As things stand at the moment, we don't even know whether the Perth Test can go ahead. I mean, it's due to be the last one in the middle of January, so it's already been pushed to that end of the tour. But because of the rules in Western Australia, and that's the complicating factor, isn't it? In each state, the rules are different, the quarantine is different, the attitude to COVID is different, and that it's stressful being out of control and not knowing what's going to happen.
Very much so. But I mean, you'd like to think that if that was the case, that Perth, that you couldn't go to Perth, that they'd double up in another state that you could play, play a couple of tests at Melbourne or Sydney and anything. But I mean, really, was the Ashes not going to take part? Was it?
I tell you what, Phil. If you're going for strong negotiation, you clear out Brisbane, you clear out Perth. England have got a great chance.
Play at all the places we seem to win at.
I reckon if we can get 5 games in Adelaide with the pink ball, we're back in it.
We've got a chance, yeah.
With the attack that they've picked, they're going to need some movement. There's not a great deal. There's only Mark Wood really that bowls with any pace. No. So if they can get the ball moving around, they've got a sniff.
We'll go into the squad selection in a minute and horses for courses and all that kind of thing. But in terms of the Australian reaction to the way that this has all unfolded in the last few weeks, I mean, Tim Payne, Australian captain who's got his own breakfast show, saying they've got a choice to make. You either get on the plane or don't. No one is forcing you to come. If you don't want to come, don't come. There will be a squad of England players coming here. And I read a piece in the Sydney Morning Herald the other day written by an old erstwhile colleague of ours, Malcolm Conn, who is never particularly Anglo. He's not an Anglophile. He described it as constant bleating from the England players. What do you make of that?
I'll be honest with you. I didn't think the Ashes is a series where you're not after any sympathy, you're not after much love at all from the opposing side. You try and win a few mind games before the series, but in these times, I was a little bit put back by Tim Payne's comments that he didn't show any empathy towards Joe Root in particular in the England side, because this England side for 18 months have been pretty much locked in a bubble. They've had to quarantine in different parts of the world. Australia have not played one test match overseas since the Ashes in 2019. Tim Payne plays one format of the game, and he hasn't played a lot of that because the Australian test match team just haven't played and they haven't travelled because they've not been willing to do so.
I mean, the white ball team came over and played over here last summer, didn't they? But
but he's not a part
of that.
Tour. Yeah, he's the test match captain. He plays one format. So I don't think he showed a great deal of class. I don't think it'll matter at all when the Ashes starts what he said and what he has or hasn't said. But I think from what I look in Australia, I think they've got enough. This England team, it looks a little bit kind of one kind of pace in terms of what they can deliver. But I do look at the Australian team and think, wait a minute, Indian second team beat them last winter.
Yeah.
So you can get at them. Tim Payne as a captain is, a huge amount of respect for the way that he dealt with the Sandpaper Gate, because he kind of put the Aussies back on path. They did well here in 2019, but when the pressure was on in terms of tactically, you go to Headingley with Ben Stokes' innings, he got quite a few things wrong there. The week after at the Oval, or they went 2-up, they went to the Oval, made a poor decision at the toss. They lost that. Last winter against India at Sydney, and on the last day, didn't quite get it right, said a few things to Ravi Ashwin. That didn't go down great. They went to Brisbane. His words were, wait till we get you to Brisbane.
Can't wait to get you to the Gabba, yeah.
And that backfired, and they lost the series against India. So, reports that the team aren't loving Justin Langer as a coach. So I do think if England, and Brisbane will be the key, Phil, if England can somehow get something out of Brisbane, a draw, just grab a draw, whatever they can get something out of Brisbane, I think a lot of pressure will start to develop on this Australian side. But the big if is how. How do they get something out of that first test match in a few weeks' time at the Gabba?
Yeah, I'm just having a look at that batting lineup as well, and we're going to touch on it as well. But that batting lineup, only one person in that batting lineup averages over 40, and that's Joe Root.
Yeah.
You've got to go, if you're going to go to Australia like they did with Strauss and Cook and everyone, you've got to get big runs. And I just, against that bowling attack, Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, Lyon, these guys, how are you going to get 4s and 500s?
Joe Root's going to get 250.
Joe Root's going to have to get 70% of them. And you just got... Yeah,
I was looking at the stats. You have to get Ashes. You have to get centuries in the Ashes down under, don't you? And who got centuries for England last time out? Milan, yeah. So he's there. Stokes, obviously, we don't think will be there. I might come back to that in just a second. But I mean, the squad. So 17 men in the main squad, Joss Butler included. Stokes is recovering still from his broken finger and taking time to prioritise his mental health, as we know. Jofra Archer and Sam Curran are out because of injury. I mean, we've known about Jofra since the middle of the summer, but Sam Curran, just to pick up on that, we were talking about this before we went on air, weren't we, about the lack of a left arm pace bowler. Tuffers, how much of a miss is that?
Well, it is a big miss, just for the variety, but also that little bit of pace. Jofra Archer, Ollie Stone, we were sort of building our hopes around going down there and sort of fighting fire with a bit of fire on bouncy pitches in Australia. That if you hold a good line and, you've got to have that bit of pace to shake them up, because with the Kookaburra ball, you're not getting a lot of that swing. You're not getting a lot of that seam movement. And you look at that sort of bowling line up there, and you just think, is there enough to really hurt the Aussies, on baked, flat, hard, bouncy pitches in Australia. Where's the pace going to come from? Bit of Mark Wood, but there's always a question mark over his, injuries and his sort of fitness to last a full tour. So I just see that it's a bit like, because if you go down under. Well, they're very good bowlers there. The likes of, Ollie Robinson had a fantastic summer. The guy for Overton as well can hold that line, hold that length outside and around off stump. But you do need a little bit of something extra just to make those inroads and those breakthroughs. I just don't know whether that England bowling unit is
Phil,
at the moment.
I think we've got to be realistic. That England aren't going to blow Australia away.
No,
they do start up. So let's forget that if the Jofra had been there, Ben Stokes, X Factor players, you could start to talk about a game plan being a bit more aggressive, take Australia on. Ben Stokes in the side, you definitely play the spinner without Ben Stokes. Unless Woakes bats at number 7, which I can't see. I don't think England will play a spinner in Brisbane. I just don't think they will do that. I think they'll play Mark Wood as that difference, and then it'll be Woakes, Robinson, Broader, Anderson, and I think Mark Wood because of that difference. So we must start talking about, let's get over there and play the aggressive game. England don't have the players to be able to do that, but I was quite impressed with Chris Silverwood yesterday when he started talking about what they're going to need to do. They're going to have to change strategic plan from what potentially they were talking about playing to what they're going to do now. And it will be that they almost play with men behind the ball and hang in. And hang in and hopefully take this Australian side into days 4 and 5 with that mindset that they can say to Australia, you're going to lose. You've got a chance of losing on days 4. That's what India did. India didn't blow them away. India didn't just go over there and score at 5 and over and then blast them out. What India did is hung in, took the game deep, and then they nicked it on day 5. An incredible chase in Brisbane. They hung in for a great draw in Sydney. They won in Melbourne. Ajinki Rahane got a tremendous sense. You've got to remember this Indian side were ball out for 36 in the pink ball game, and Virat went home, and they were given no chance. So this Australian side can be beaten. They're not fragile. They're not an Australian side that you 15 years ago that you had no chance. Whatever the side you took there, you really didn't have much of a chance. This Australian side with Warner at the top, who we've seen in the IPL, he's lost his place in the IPL. What's his kind of thought process long term? Then they've got 2 outstanding players at 3 and 4 in Smith and Labuschagne, and they've got Cameron Green, a young all-rounder at 6, Travis Head probably at 5, Tim Payne with no test century at 7. So it's not a batting lineup that really sends shivers down you. The 2 at 3 and 4 are outstanding, but it's their bowling attack, and that's what I see is a bowling attack from Australia that could blow England away. But I don't see that England have a bowling attack that can blow Australia away, but they have a bowling attack that if they get big runs, they could wear them down, and they could bowl just outside our stump, full of length, with a ring field, and go, right, we're going to try and bore the life out of you. One thing's for sure is the bouncer with that attack, it's null and void. I just can't see, apart from Mark Wood. I mean, kind of Ollie Robinson bouncer, but Stuart Broad maybe, but it's going to be patience, bowling to hit the top of off stump, bowling for dots, bowling for maidens, and try and force the error by discipline.
I agree with you, and then also play that sort of pressure card that India did put on Tim Payne batting at 7. Tim, this sort of like sort of fragileness, of a home series. You've got to win this. You've got to win this, Australia. That's what they will be feeling. And if you don't give them an easy ride early on, that then just builds and builds and builds, and anything can happen.
They've got to park the bus, haven't they, Phil?
They've got to park the bus.
Park the bus. They need to get Mourinho over there, get in the dressing room and park the bus.
And the fact that they haven't played a test match since that India series, Michael. I mean, how significant is it that? I mean, are they rusty or are they rested? What do you think?
In this era, when the players play so much, I don't think it's going to matter too much. They'll play a bit of state cricket. They'll have a camp. And I'm sure by the time that first test is up and running, Australia will be absolutely in full flow and desperate to hammer England. And they'll know that you got to remember when India beat Australia at Brisbane, it was the last test match of the series. So India were Australian ready. They've been playing at all the different venues. When the Aussies get you for the first time in Brisbane, that's why those warm-up games, I'm so keen that England make sure that those 2 warm-up games that they play, they don't play 13 aside. And I know there'll be a lot of young England players sent over to make up the 11s, make them 2 first-class matches. make them really tough games of cricket. Split the sides up, put a bit on it. I don't know how they're going to do that, but put something on it. And even if they can't be first class, con the players into thinking that they're first class, because they have to play tough, hard cricket. If they play this 13-a-side stuff leading into the first test where, players come and go off the field and you get another bat if you don't get a decent score, that can't happen. They've got to play real hard cricket as much as they can, because what will happen in those two games, there will be 3 or 4 or 5 players that aren't in the squad, like a Saqib Mahmood, a Matt Parkinson, players that haven't been picked in the main, Liam Livingston potentially, who I would have put in the main squad.
All of them 3.
yeah, you could argue that all 3 of them should be in the main squad, but you're going to have players that want to be in that main squad who will be desperate to do well in those 2 games. So those preparation games, you go back to 10-11 when England won there, they played the 3 warm-up games to win. It wasn't that we were just having a little bit of a jolly up and a few hours in the field and a few overs here and, have a bit of time in the middle as a batting unit. It was, no, we're playing to win, and that's what England have to do in those 2 warm-up games. Play to win, make it tough, and it give them a better chance to do something in the first test.
And you're right, Ellie. You're talking about those hundreds. You remember when we were over there, I think, when James Vince got run out on 80.
Oh, yeah.
That
was a sliding doors moment, wasn't it?
It was a sliding doors moment, wasn't it? So they're the kind of things in Australia. If he goes on there and scores 170 or 160, which he was looking great, the whole picture then seems to turn around, and that's what England and I agree with you, Mike, about this sort of hanging in there. Don't go through the gears. Just keep them out there because it gets very hot. It gets very hot in Australia.
And so you probably get. Well, we're talking about the spinners. So you've got Jack Leach, obviously, will be the first choice spinner. But so Dom Best, should they have brought Matt Parkinson in rather than Dom Best? Phil, what do you think?
I would have fancied a bit of Parkinson. Finger spin over in Australia, it's hard. It's quite hard work, finger spin. There's not a lot of great return, little bit of bounce for you and anything. But Parkinson, I think, had done pretty well. He'd showed that he had this sort of little bit of mystery, can spin it on flat pitches. If you lose the toss and you're going into to a flat Australian pitch somewhere, I don't know, Adelaide or something, he might be able to come on and make a difference in that first innings. Just get you that perhaps twofer, but a couple of crucial wickets. I know Dom Best gives you a little bit more with the bat and what have you, but they didn't really play Dom Best when he was getting wickets.
No, that's my problem with the selection, that they didn't carry on with Dom in India when he was doing well.
Yeah.
We haven't seen England pick a spinner all summer. So Jack Leach, who again is England's number 1 spinner in my eyes, has not bowled the ball for England. So that's why I honestly look at the squad and think, well, how can they get 5 bowlers in? The only way they get 5 bowlers is by playing Butler at 6 and Wokes at 7. You're not going to go with Chris Wokes batting at 7 in Australia. So Wokes will certainly be 8. Robinson will be after him. Broad will be after him. And that number 11 will be, do you need a spinner? Or do you want Mark Wood to play in that first game in Brisbane? Or do you want to try and stifle them and play Jimmy Anderson and Broad together at Brisbane? But we've known in the last couple of tours when that's happened, it's just not worked, that kind of pace on that kind of surface. If you go into Brisbane with 4 bowlers all bowling at 84 to 86 miles an hour max, that's going to be tough.
Let me just ask you about Ben Stokes, you two, because it feels as if the conversation around Ben Stokes' selection for England has just been off the table because, giving him the chance to get mentally in a fit state to play cricket again is the most important thing, focusing on his mental health. But he posted a picture today of him holding a cricket bat for the first time. He's had an operation on his finger, the broken finger that he broke back in April. And he then played in those white ball games in the middle of the summer. But he said, it's the first time I've actually been able to hold the bat properly. And this is what Chris Silverwood said in terms of his mental health. He said, Ben is moving forward. The communications I've had with him, he's definitely more upbeat. But what I will say is there will be no pressure from me for him to rush back. I've said, when you're ready, call me and we'll make a plan from there. My concern, first and foremost, is his well-being. And when he does come back, we'll make sure he's in the right place. Is there a chance, Michael, do you think, that we might see Ben Stokes coming out at some point?
Yes. I think look, he'll be given time. He's got to make sure that he's absolutely right and ready when he makes that decision to come back into the fold. looking at it realistically, if it's the Caribbean, it's the Caribbean, and that's fine. As long as he's well. Knowing Ben Stokes and knowing that he had an operation last Monday, and since he's had that operation, I'm led to believe he's been like a new person, because that finger was a huge issue. I got told the other day apparently his ligament had kind of got connected with the scar tissue, so that's why he couldn't bend his finger. And I've known through my time, when I had dodgy knees and had operations, I had one operation after I think 2006, and came from the operating theatre 6 weeks later, tried to run it. It felt exactly the same, and it completely grates on you because you can't do what you want to do, and you go into the operating theatre to hope that it gives you a better chance of coming out better. And when it doesn't happen, and you still feel what you felt before, it's an awful feeling. And then all of a sudden, my knee never really got back to what it was when I was a whippersnapper, but I had another operation, and a few months after that training, I suddenly felt free, and it just frees up your mind. I think, I can actually run again and start moving again and start talking and thinking about playing cricket. And I'm not saying that he's going to get on the plane, and it is a long shot for him to play in the Ashes, but I do think this last week would have been huge for him. The fact that he can bend that finger and he can put his hand around his bat for the first time, he will feel a huge amount of a weight of relief that he can finally do that, because I'm sure he'd have been feeling his finger and the pain that he would have felt from it, and thought, what is wrong in there? You always feel things in your body, you go, what is wrong? And you get frustrated, and I'm sure he'd have had many conversations with doctors and specialists. The fact that they went in there last Monday and found something that was clearly not right, and they've put it right, and the next day, on Tuesday, he could clench his fist for the first time. And I think that's given him a huge amount of a positive reaction. Let's wait and see, Ellie. It's a lot more positive this week than it was the previous week, but we've got to give him a bit of time.
Yeah, it's a path, isn't it? You can see a path through it. You're sitting there and you're going, well, hold on a minute, I've had this thing operated on, and I'm still not nowhere any closer. You become, as you say, Mike, very depressed and what have you. But then just those little nuggets of things that you can think are going to get you're back on the path to getting out on the middle will be a huge bonus for him, not only for his injury, but I think also for where he is at the moment as well, and his confidence, and his I want to get back, I want to get playing, and his mental state. I think that's going to be a huge leap for him.
And I think the whole cricket world wants to see Ben Stokes back, not just because he's an incredible performer, but because for his own sake.
Box office, yeah, box office.
And
but we need him
to be able to play what he loves.
Yeah, and the problem with an Ashes series, and Ben's got to be realistic as well, the pressure that you're under and the spotlight, and particularly on someone like Ben that did so much in 2019 in the Ashes and in the World Cup, he might think in the back, I'll gamble, or I'll go a little bit early, I'm fine. He's just got, and he'll have the experts around him telling him what to do and how to get through it. He's just got to make sure. If the one piece of advice from seeing some others struggle in the past is just take a little bit longer. If it is a little bit longer and you come back and you find that's better than coming back a little bit too soon, and then you get back and you suddenly go, oh no, I'm not quite right. But I do get a feeling that finger was a huge play for him, and he can now hold that bat once again, and probably knowing Ben, he's probably in the nets now. Knowing Ben, I mean, he's got 4 weeks to rest it up, but he'll be in the nets having a knock, trying to get ready.
Do you know, it's funny, isn't it? I think back now of interviewing him when he took over the captaincy, for when the rest of the squad got pinged with COVID down in Bristol during the one day series, and they called up Ben Stokes, who hadn't recovered, and he sat in, and I sat on a Zoom call with him, and I said, how's your finger? And he just put the two index fingers up, and they were both as bent as each other. And that was the first thing he said to me, and I thought, that finger is really, really bothering him.
Yeah, well, I think when he came back,
it gets into your nut as well, doesn't it? It gets into your head as well. That you can't. Oh, is this going to be the last time I can pick up a bat? You know what I mean? So it's great news.
But with fingers, I mean, you always feel that every day you'll bend a bit more, and eventually you get the clench of the fist back. But with Ben, he just wasn't getting anything back. No. And no surprise when his ligament had been caught up with his scar tissue. It was in a mess, and thankfully he's had that all sorted. And let's just wait and see. I think that's the best way of putting it.
And they're pretty crucial, aren't they? Pretty crucial things.
You need your digits.
You need your digits.
Well, particularly, yes, when you field at slip and you bat and you bowl and you do everything. Yeah. We mentioned the Lions squad and the fact that that's going to be named later this week, and so we'd expect to see, as you say, the likes of Liam Livingstone, Matt Parkinson, Saqib Mahmood in that team. How much movement could there potentially be between the Lions squad and the main squad? Do we think, guys? Will it just be a question of if somebody gets injured or if they need COVID cover?
Yeah, I guess so. I think England are in a place, if someone does something remarkably well in those warm-up games, I don't think they'll bat an eyelid of throwing someone in there if it's going to improve the team. The reason why I was surprised they didn't go with Liam Livingstone, I just feel he's got a bit of something that... Yeah. I look at this England side and I look at the fielding team in particular, and they're a quiet
There's a bit of spin there.
Team.
Sorry, Mike, and there's a bit of spin there as well.
Yeah, but Phil, I just look at presence on the field. They're a quiet team. Yeah. And even if Liam's in the squad and he's not in the 11, but he's in the squad and he's out there fielding every now and again, I just think you need characters in Australia that have got a bit of swagger, a bit of confidence, believe in themselves, and he's got more belief than many others. If they needed a spare batter, or say Butler pulled out and Bairstow kept, I think personally I'd rather have a Liam Livingstone strolling out there at number 7 or 6 in the way that he plays. His first-class record is as good as a lot of the players that they're picking anyway. And Phil says, he bowls a bit of off-spin, a bit of leg spin. He'll field in the key positions. One of the problems with the Test match teams over the last year has been catching. They've not been a brilliant catching team. So I personally would have had Liam Livingstone in that squad to offer that kind of all-round presence and game, which I think the Australians fear that style of player. They like players, and again, I look at this England side. Hamid, Burns quiet, Milan's quiet, Pope's quiet. If Brisbane goes badly, and we hope it doesn't, you'll find that the Aussies are a group of bullies, and they're good at it. They're brilliant. They're probably the best in the world when they get on top of you, and that's why you just need a little bit of something in your own character to kind of look them back in the eye and go, nah, you're not bullying me. And that's why I'd have picked Liam Livingstone in the squad.
Yeah, you've got to be able to punch back slightly, haven't you?
Well, let's hear from the England all-rounder Chris Woakes now. He's part of the squad for the Ashes and the T20 World Cup, which starts in the Middle East on Sunday. Well, we'll hear him talk shortly about the challenges posed by that tour to Australia. But first we spoke about the World Cup, which he believes is wide open.
I always feel like they can be won by anyone to a certain degree. You can look down the list of teams that are here and can easily probably pick out 7 winners, really. So, there's obviously people give their favourites, but at the same time, I think it's anyone's really. So exciting to be a part of it, and really, really looking forward to the tournament starting. Does
the squad feel any pressure about being the number 1 ranked team in the world?
No, I don't, to be honest. I think it's something which actually the England teams and white ball teams have kind of got used to the last 3-4 years, or however long it was since we've been around that number 1 or top spots. It's something which kind of not what we expect, because obviously there's some great teams out there as well who are always pushing us to try and get better. But I think the kind of psyche in this team is to constantly push each other, constantly look at ways to get better. How can we improve? We never look to stand still. And, the majority of the guys have played all around the world, got a lot of experience in this format. So we know, as I said, that anyone on their day can kind of turn it on in T20 cricket, can take one sort of performance or, almost an over or a few balls can change a game and win a game. So I think, people will tip us or a few teams to be favourites, and obviously with us being, up at the top of the rankings, that's expected. But I don't think the team feels any pressure by that, none whatsoever.
How much are you keen to perform yourself? Because looking at your record, you had a long gap where you weren't playing any T20 cricket for England at all, were you? Between 2015 and then this last summer, you didn't play a single T20 international.
Yeah, that's right. It was 6 years between the 2 last performances or appearances, and I never really, I would say I'd given up on playing international T20 cricket. I was never kind of expecting myself to retire from the format, but I certainly probably thought that they might have moved on, the team had moved down a different direction, and I was kind of happy with that. I was content with that. I certainly feel, having had that kind of, I was rested a lot of the time at the start around 2015-16, so that concentrate on ODIs and Test cricket. And I think that actually benefited those formats for me. It helped my performances in those formats. So I was never kind of too disappointed by that. But once I got the call to come back into the squad, I was really excited. Great to be a part of it again. And as I said, to be a part of the World Cup now is really exciting as well.
This is the start of what's going to be a very, very long period of playing cricket for you, because you're named in the Ashes squad as well. I mean, how exciting is it to be in that Ashes squad? Does it still feel like the ultimate?
Yeah, definitely. To be a part of an Ashes series, I've been fortunate to have played in a few. Made my debut back in 2013 in an Ashes series, and ever since that moment, it's never lost its shine, never lost its sparkle, being selected in a squad to play an Ashes series. So, especially to go down under and test yourself against them in their own conditions is always the pinnacle, I believe. History tells us it's very difficult to go there and win, so it kind of gives you that extra edge to go there and try and perform. And getting the call or getting the message that I was, part of the squad is always a great feeling.
There's been a lot of narrative. I mean, as there inevitably is before an Ashes series, a lot of discussion about whether it should be happening. I mean, from a player's point of view, are you feeling as relaxed and as content with the conditions you're going to face out there as you can be?
Yeah, I think so. There's still, obviously, behind the scenes, there's a few things being ironed out, I think, at all sorts of levels. I think COVID is kind of, it's not just about dealing with Cricket Australia, it's dealing with the government as well, obviously. And obviously a lot of that goes over our heads and is dealt with by people above us. So, and thankfully so. But I think players are, relatively relaxed, I think. There's a lot being talked about in the media, which, I think not everyone knows, the true ins and outs of what's going on behind the scenes. And I think, in time, I think everyone will probably, realise what's happening or what's going to happen. But I think the most important thing is the tour's been given the green light. There's been a squad announced, and hopefully we can all get down there and be living in the best conditions to hopefully perform at our best. And both teams are going to have to effectively be going through the same sort of conditions. So obviously both teams will be wanting the best living conditions possible, across a 5-match series, which is always intense. We want to get it as close to normal as possible, obviously.
I think there has been a lot of sympathy to the the state of what it's been like playing cricket for England in the last 2 years, because it's obviously been very, very abnormal times. But some people I've seen in Australia have maybe not been as sympathetic and have said, come on, get on with it. You're lucky to be doing this job. I mean, how stressful has it been, would you say?
It's certainly had its moments. And I think over time, eventually it kind of does take its toll. And I think sometimes, until you've been in that situation and done it over and over again, the novelty certainly wears off. And I think that's where we're at, obviously, as an England team, having played ahead of a lot of cricket in bubbles with quarantine. And I know other teams have done that as well, but some haven't. And, I think some people get it, some people don't, and that's fine. Certain people have certain views on it, and everyone's entitled to that. But I think until you've been in it and done it and experienced it over and over again, it's hard to fully have a say on it. So, look, people can say what they want. I think at the end of the day, we've got to live it. We've got to be a part of it. And there's no player that doesn't want to be a part of an Ashes series. If COVID wasn't around, people are chomping at the bit and desperate, and guys still are. But we just want to obviously try and be under the best sort of conditions possible so that we can still live our lives outside of cricket. I don't think we should be kind of criticised for that. That's probably the best way to do it.
And I mentioned that it's a long period away from home. How important is it that you've got your wife and your girls with you at this stage, at this moment?
Yeah, no, it's great that they've been able to travel to the World Cup so far with us. They obviously flew out with us, and that's great to have them here. Great experience for them to be able to travel in, see an aeroplane, and travel with the team and be on tour with us. Obviously between now and what will be January 20th, I believe it roughly by the end of the Ashes. It's a hell of a long time to be away from home. So the longer we can be together, it's obviously good for me. It's good for my wife, and obviously good for the children as well. So really excited to be a part of the World Cup, but obviously great to have them here as well. And
you feeling confident about the next few weeks? Are you going to be raising that trophy in a couple of weeks' time? What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I certainly hope so. I think, as I mentioned to you before, I think it's T20 World Cup, so you need to have a little bit of luck along the way. It's certainly a shorter tournament than what we had in 2019 with the ODI World Cup. With the fact that you play 5 group games and then into a semi-final and final. It's quite relatively short, isn't it? So you kind of do need to find some form pretty quickly. gain some momentum, and then I think the main thing is that you try and get out of the group, and then at the end of the day, it's 2 knockout games to lift the trophy, and that's the best way to look at it. But it's really exciting to be part of it. I think everyone's, of course, quietly confident. We back ourselves. We believe in our skills. We believe we can go out there and execute, and hopefully put in some strong performances. As I said to you, we know that there are some dangerous teams in this tournament as well.
Well, that was Chris Wokes. I spoke to him a little bit earlier on today, and we'll talk about the T20 World Cup shortly. But just a question to go back to families. We talked about this a little bit before, didn't we? But Tuffers, people like Chris Wokes, Johnny Bairstow, Jos Buttler, Davin Malan and Mark Wood are all in both the Ashes team and the T20 team.
Yeah.
That's 4 months away, potentially. That is a long time to be away from families and friends. And do you think that... even though that they are doing a job that they love, as I said to Chris there, it's a long time to be stuck in a hotel with your teammates, isn't it?
Well, yes, and we take that on board. And as you said, there's been a hell of a lot of sympathy for the cricketers, haven't there, with these bubbles and what have you. And what did he say? He's not coming back till January, middle of January. 4 months away is a hell of a long time. But I think also, though, you do have to then also remember that it comes with the territory a little bit. And I know things are completely different nowadays, especially with COVID and what have you. But, you don't want to be too relaxed, you don't want to have everything too sort of all buttoned up, because then sometimes it just takes you off your edge a little bit. But he'd be first on my team sheet for everything. Chris Wokes, fantastic fella, fantastic bloke to have around the team, really valued member of that England setup. And I heard, he said there also about getting the conditions right. You just want to get things right. Listen, if it's not there, if the families aren't there for every minute of every day, well, okay, sometimes so be that. But it's just about getting your head in that right space, that everyone's all right, they are just down the road, or that they're just at the end of a telephone call and everything's happened. So it's about just getting the overall sort of headspace of the players right. It doesn't necessarily mean that the families have got to be there every minute of every day.
Well, they won't be, will they? Because
no.
I think that if you've got it's the kind of the kids who are preschool age, maybe who are at this part of the tour, and then they might not come out later.
Yeah.
And
it's about taking touring. Ellie, is about taking all of the things outside of playing cricket out of the players' sort of responsibility a little bit. Just make sure everything's sorted in the back room sort of thing, if you know what I mean. And that's the best way to get. Just having everything laid on your lap sometimes isn't the right way, but it's just about getting the player knowing that everything apart from his cricket, he can just concentrate on his cricket, and everything else is taken care of.
Well, look, Michael, you've been watching T20 cricket a lot in the last few days, haven't you? You've been doing a lot of IPL stuff. This T20 World Cup, I mean, as Chris Wokes says, England number 1 ranked team in the world. India are favourites for the tournament. But who is your money on?
Well, I think, as Chris said, T20 is quite unpredictable, because I do think you need an element of fortune to go your way. In 50-over cricket, realistically, the best team generally wins. But in T20 cricket, an individual can have a 6-over burst, with the bat in hand and smack you 80 quickly, and that can win any team, any game of cricket. So I do think the kind of luck needs to be going your way, and you need your star players to be in fine form. Not many of England's players in the IPL have done too much. A few of them obviously missed out. Owen Morgan's leading the KKR team to the semi-finals. They'll play Delhi on Wednesday, but he himself with the bat has done nothing, but he's captained brilliantly. England, I have favourites, not India. I don't know how India get the favourites tag in T20 cricket. I just think they've been a long way off in the last couple of tournaments. The wickets will be interesting, because they're going to be wickets that we've seen in the IPL a bit used. I don't think the 200 pluses are going to be always possible. So 150, 160 might be winning scores. Look, West Indies are a threat. Pakistan, that'll be a great story. Pakistan would be a great story.
You'd never write off Pakistan.
No. And I wouldn't write them off. You're right, Phil. The West Indies, New Zealand have got high-class players. That they'll come up with strategies. They're a real strategic team now, New Zealand. I'll say it now, I don't give Australia much chance. In T20 cricket, they've really
got
struggled.
Hammered, haven't they, in T20 this year?
Glenn Maxwell's exceptional, so he'll have to have an incredible tournament. But I don't see the Aussies doing too much. England, India, West Indies, New Zealand, one of those four, and maybe down the right wing, Pakistan, because of the conditions and the drier wickets.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. He just said there, you say 5 group games and then bang, you're into a semi-final, So that momentum, it's a little bit about that peaking at the right time, who's in form, who can carry that through, and all these things come into it because it is a shortened, it's a shortened competition. So it's a bit crash back and wallop, get yourself out there, as he said, and then, anything can happen. But I mean, England are pretty good now, aren't they? They know how to get themselves out.
England have got everything covered. They have all the, I think Jofra Archer's a big miss though. Ben Stokes, he's a big miss, but in T20 cricket you probably can do without him because they've got so much strength in depth. Adil Rashid, Moeen Ali, spin twins, going to be very, very important. And obviously that opening combo at the top of the order, Joss Buttler, Jason Roy. Johnny Bairstow, where's he going to bat? David Milan, does he play on the slower spinning wickets? It's a nice headache for England to have in T20 cricket. There'll be probably 5 players, I think there's 16 in the squad, 5 players that'll be missing out of the first game, probably all thinking that they should be playing. That's how strong the T20 squad is. When you look at the Test squad and you start looking at who may miss out, there's a few players that are missing out that potentially shouldn't be in the squad. And in T20 cricket, they certainly don't have that. They have a huge squad of players and probably 5 or 6 that are not even in the squad that could be in the team. They're that good at white ball cricket.
Yeah. The one thing, as you say, you just mentioned there also about Moeen Morgan and KKR, even though he hasn't got the runs, that form will hopefully come back and he'll start scoring the runs. But they'll be very well led. They'll be very sort of assured in what they're doing. I'd put them as favourites, without doubt, yeah.
Every single ball of every game in the T20 World Cup will be live on 5 Live Sports Extra. You should say that now. The first game, England's first game against the West Indies, is until a week on Saturday. And Carlos Brathwaite, remember the name? He's going to be part of our commentary team. So West Indies defending champions, let's not forget. Feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? But preliminary matches start on Sunday. Scotland play Bangladesh. Ireland are involved in this preliminary tournament as well. I wonder if we could see a Scotland or an Ireland, or Sri Lanka are going to have to pre-qualify as well. So it could be really intriguing, couldn't it? And as you say, it could just in such a short tournament, anything could happen potentially. Yeah,
and then you have the likes of Afghanistan, who have a number of players that they all play in these franchise leagues around the world. Rashid Khan, Mohammed Nabi, some real quality cricketers. So we're going to see. I always love the T20 World Cup because it's short, sharp. It seems to be, get into action early. There seems to be very important games early in a tournament in the T20 World Cup. And it's generally pretty much before it starts and before it's right down to the final. So short and sharp, and I'm with Phil. England, because of their knowledge of how to win, their knowledge of winning that World Cup in 19, and that kind of togetherness that they would have felt of knowing that they've lifted that first trophy. I think it'll go a long way. This group, won back in the day in Barbados with Paul Collingwood, who will be a part of the coaching team. But this group of players, since they've changed the way that white ball cricket's been played in this country, they just seem to have that mojo of knowing exactly how to win the big moment.
Yeah, and they know how to react when things don't quite go the way. The white ball team, the criticism that I did have them over the past years was that sometimes they just played one way. And you were talking, Mike, about the pitches. Perhaps a 140 or a 150 could be the right score. I think now they're so experienced now that they can sort of, they get that worked out very quickly and can just be a little bit more flexible, when sometimes they were a little bit just one way. But they seem so easy now to just sort of, learn on the job.
And it could be, Phil, that, for a lot of these players, quite a few of them have missed out in the IPL. They've decided to rest. It'll be their last opportunity to put themselves in the T20 window for that next IPL auction, which is early in the new year.
Always thinking ahead.
Well, I'm just looking at the paddle. If you can get paddles to be raised in the auction, you've got a great chance of going for a few quid. If there's no paddles raised, you've not scored enough runs in the T20 World Cup, so it's a great chance to put yourself in the shop window.
And isn't that an outrageous thought that if England were to do well, if they were to win in the final, it's not much of a gap before the Ashes starts, and you have got a little bit of a core of that team, that squad going straight off to the Ashes, a little bit of momentum.
Yeah,
like a bit of momentum, don't we?
There will,
Definitely.
there will be a core going off there, as you say, bouncing and bubbly and all happy, and then that injection of new players as well. They'll feed off of that, so that's what England will be hoping for, without doubt. As you say, talking about momentum and everything like that, nothing better than turning up to an Ashes series, being World Cup T20 winners, and a few of the guys are there. They'll have a big smile on their face and be brilliant.
Australia don't make the semi-final, you never know. We'll see.
well,
and to say, I am keeping positive all the way up till at
You
least
always
lunch
do,
on day
Ellie.
one at the Gabba.
I don't
always
think
do.
they will make the semi-final, Ellie. I think Aussies
No.
will miss out on the semi-final in the T20 World Cup.